3 months from now, will we really remember yesterday like standing out as a big part of this process? Will it be one of the game changers of this process? I don't think necessarily it will be. Was this to maybe satisfy the requirements of a Major League Baseball relocation application? Was this something that Major League Baseball might have hinted and said, you might want to get a few of these things on the record?
Here's Brody Brazil.
So the dust has settled just a little bit since yesterday. A's owner John Fisher giving not one, but two on-the-record interviews regarding the status of the Oakland A's and potential relocation to Las Vegas. I don't think he's ever talked publicly about that topic yet. Hasn't done interviews in at least years, if not decades. So this is a lot to process and digest. And I've had some time to think about it, got to sleep on it. I'm putting these thoughts together just a little bit better now. I've come up with some realizations and some revelations. And as you know in these videos, I like to make main points. And usually it takes me a while to work up to them, work into them, explain them, and then deliver them. Well, this time I'm just going to say them straight away, and then we'll kind of circle back to them at the very end. Two main takeaways for me. Why now? Why do this tour of two? And by the way, there's going to be a third interview in the near future with ESPN. Why, after being silent for so long, is a Wednesday afternoon the right time to speak? This is almost like not even a vegetarian, but a vegan, like a strict vegan, waking up one morning and saying, all right, I'll have the prime rib. Was this something he just wanted to do? Was this something he was asked to do? Was this something that he had to do? I don't know. And are those questions important to what he said in this process? I'm not sure. Those are just things on my mind. That's the first part of it. Why now? The other main part is for who? Who are these comments and statements for? And by the way, I should correct what I said earlier. 2 interviews, plus he also published a commentary piece in the Las Vegas Review-Journal. They did a Q&A with him that came out yesterday morning in tandem with a couple paragraphs that he wrote directed to the people of Las Vegas. But everything in total, what was the objective here? Who was this for? Was this trying to make good in Oakland? Because the reaction I've got, I'm not sure that took place, like at all. I think this might have complicated the matters more than it eased anybody's thoughts or emotions. Was this for Las Vegas? Was this to try and build a better bridge to Nevadans? Maybe some of that took place. I can't speak for Las Vegans. Was there a resounding change in how they feel about the A's or the project or the potential move? I'm not sure that took effect either. So the only other thing I can think about of who this was for, maybe it was for Mr. Fisher. Maybe it was the opportunity to get some things off his chest. Maybe all of the T-shirts and chants. And he told Raj Mathai that he's feeling hurt about all this. So maybe it was. Maybe it was his motivation to do this. And again, I'm just considering these things. What do they mean to the total process and the ultimate end game of what might happen to the A's? Maybe not much. But just as I look back to the last 24 hours, for who and why now are my biggest questions. So let's dive a little bit deeper here. It's a big deal that he finally spoke, and I'll be honest, I never thought that day would come. He's gone so long through all of this process in Oakland and in Las Vegas for the public funding. And now with the relocation application he says submitted, I'd be curious to know more details about it, like where the A's plan on playing for 3 years, 25 to 27. If that process is complete, like it's got some details we're all curious about, but I digress. So why now? Like why in the timing of this was this the right time? But at the same time, I say it's a big deal that he, finally spoke. And I do appreciate it to a certain extent that we finally broke that ice after all these years. Finally. And maybe it leads to more. I don't know. Maybe he feels more comfortable speaking after this, or maybe not. I think we're still figuring out the ramifications of what was said, what people will go back on, what will stand out and stick out most. But he also, in the same respect, didn't say a whole lot. Was there anything that surprised you? Was there anything that made you feel better or different or more educated about the situation? And look, sometimes there just is nothing else to find out. People have been talking about this for so long and to such a great degree. What did you expect that was going to be new, interesting, or exciting? But it didn't come with any one particular revelation that we weren't aware of before. I also found it interesting that the preference was to not do it on camera. Now, let me see it and say it here from two sides. I understand maybe his opinion and feeling like, well, if I go on camera, there could be a moment or two where we really need to hash out something in the weeds, and that becomes uncomfortable, and that's going to be the thing that stands out, and we'll miss the bigger points. And he obviously doesn't do a lot of things on camera, so maybe just not comfortable in that scenario. Okay, we can address that. On the flip side, though, and I'll say this from the media perspective, but also even from his own perspective, sometimes when you're really trying to deliver a message and you want it to get across and you want people to see that you're human and that this is affecting you and that this is a real situation, quotes don't always do it. They don't always tell you the body language or the sentiment at hand and in the moment and the facial expressions. They don't always tell the complete picture. That's why audio, but especially video plus audio, are such a tool in storytelling. And in this case, in communication. You know that old, I don't want to say quote, but let's eat grandma? Well, if you don't put a comma in there, it's like, let's eat grandma. Instead, you put the comma in there and it's let's eat grandma. You know what I mean? It's almost riskier to do this in textual format only. And look, he did a text interview with Raj. He did one with the Las Vegas Review-Journal. I'm just saying from the extent of if you really want to make sure that everything comes across the way you want it, in his opinion, it was to do it textually. In my opinion, it's say it so people can see it. So there's no question about what you said, how you said it, the context of the question that was asked. And I know that Raj and NBC specifically just went word for word. So there was no change of words. There was nothing that was incorrect, but it just comes even more straightforward when it's actually you saying it and people being able to hear it. So you get the quotes, but you don't get the full context. And then for me, the media person, of course, I would much rather see something and hear something in 2023 rather than it just being textual. I said before, it's like a vegan, a hardcore vegan waking up one day and saying, you know what, I want meat. It's just, it's an interesting thing that happened here and how it happened and how 3 interviews all scheduled at once. Speaking with the Las Vegas media first, strategic. I'm not going to go too deep into that. I think that's obvious. Doing 3 interviews, 1 in Las Vegas, 1 with the Bay Area media, 1 person, Raj Mathai, who, Raj, by the way, was the only person to do an interview with Dave Cavill the day after they announced their intentions to strictly focus on Las Vegas and not look at Oakland anymore. In the interview, I said there were not a lot of things that came out that we weren't aware of. There were some things that were highly debated and questioned, and there's already articles out there which kind of go directly against some things that were spelled out, like the A's losing $40 million this year. there's going to be a lot of fact checking on that. And how will we ever know? Only a small circle of people are privy to the A's books. And that's just the way it works in professional sports. So we have no choice but to take somebody for their word, and believe it or not, that's what was said. It could also be totally inaccurate. It could also be a stretch of the truth. It doesn't have to be completely right or completely wrong. It could be completely somewhere in the middle that's neither right nor wrong. So we'll have to let that one exist in the conversation. He also said that he takes responsibility. He said he was hurt. And again, I feel like that emotion comes across so much better if it were in a multimedia format interview with audio and video. I think it just, if you really wanted to say that and you really meant it and you really wanted it to come across, I can tell you this entire situation has hurt me too. Personally, professionally, I'm saying it to you here right now, just like this. I'm not going to go deep into every single quote and analyze every single thing that was said. Maybe that's a different video for a different time. But there is one thing, one sequence in Raj's Q&A that I've got to touch on here. So Raj says, "I'll get personal here. I've been going to A's games for 40 years. It's gut-wrenching to see what looks like is going to happen. What's your message to A's fans?" Mr. Fisher replies, "My message to fans is, hey, we did an awful lot of great things for this team. Over the last 20 years or 18 years, we've been involved with the team. The A's made it to the playoffs 6 years. We've had some great players along the way. We made changes at the Coliseum. We did an awful lot to really reach out and be a good steward of the franchise for fans. And I'm sorry that it hasn't worked out." There's another paragraph which we'll get to in just a second. But just going back to this, well, the A's actually made the playoffs 7 years. Might have forgotten the 2006 season. Had some great players along the way. I agree. But that's not what's in question here. The inability to keep those players that other teams highly covet, the players that would make your franchise sustainable and successful for the long term, and we wouldn't even be in this conversation right now. Had great players and not being able to keep great players is a difficult part of this. Made changes at the Coliseum. Well, I'll hand it to him on this. This current A's ownership was given a very difficult task. The Coliseum got out of date in the 80s and 90s. No improvements. It went more to multi-purpose than to baseball. So they were behind the curve entirely. And yes, there were some positive things done to the Coliseum, but elaborate on that. To what extent? Did you do every last thing possible? And the Coliseum is not really a factor as much as the team and the turnover and obviously the parallel paths and threat to Las Vegas. We did an awful lot to really reach out and be a good steward of the franchise for the fans. I would only ask in that sentence that you just expand a little bit. What do you mean? You should be able to go on and on about that. How, when, where, how many times, in what ways. Can you? And I'm sorry that it hasn't worked out. Well, the team would work out. It may be sorry that the Oakland and Howard Terminal part didn't work out. He goes on, "It's a difficult proposition to move a team, especially from an area where you grew up. But at the end of the day, I felt that Las Vegas offered the team and the A's the best chance for success, the best chance to build a new stadium, and to be able to kind of give Oakland, or give athletics fans wherever they may be, the opportunity to see great players and know they would be able to stay with the team over the long term." So clearly that retention aspect is being discussed here, right? There's an acknowledgement of the lack of retention of players. But let me just condense this sentence here where it says, Las Vegas offered the team and the A's the best chance for success to be able to kind of give Oakland, or give A's fans wherever they may be, the best opportunity to see great players. To give Oakland the chance to have a ballpark in Las Vegas to keep players? There's not a regional draw for this team. Oakland fans will not be following this team to Las Vegas, and you rip it out of the community where it's been for 50 plus years. I mean, and that's acknowledged in fairness. I don't think you're giving Oakland fans and A's fans, wherever they may be. This is self-admittedly, the A's fan base is great here locally. And I don't even think you've seen the tip of the iceberg of it in recent years. Longtime A's fans know that. You know that it's kind of like a sleeper community and has been for the last decade or so. I don't know that A's fans exist in mass across the country or to the quote here, wherever they may be. So that's how I see this interesting. This was a most interesting section of the Q&A. I'm also not sure if we got any answers about why Oakland and Howard Terminal didn't work. It's going to be a we said, they said type situation. I mean, Oakland has flat out already put out a fact sheet about how much infrastructure money they raised, how they did it, when they did it, the fact that even more was about to be on the table. And maybe that total amount necessary wasn't entirely reached, but to know that that much progress had been made in a pretty quick amount of time, and the only response on it we got was, well, Oakland just couldn't do it. Fair enough. True to some extent, but again, here's where we get to the truth versus not the truth versus somewhere in the middle, right? And all of this is going to be left to interpretation. But the real thing is the initial commentary on why Howard Terminal wasn't going to work and why the A's had to back away from Oakland was because apparently things were going to take too long. So first it was taking too long, and now it's that the money wasn't there. And again, maybe in reality, a small combination of both. But to the point that if it's not one or the other and we're in the middle, can this be something that just needed a little bit more time to work out? I was asked yesterday, about this being the third team to leave Oakland. This one is so different. The Warriors, there was a little bit of conversation, but they knew what they wanted to do. And San Francisco never had, besides the Cow Palace, which is not even in San Francisco, they've never had an indoor arena venue. This was an opportunity for the Warriors to go back to where they came from. Literally, they were in San Francisco first. And they're right across the bay. That's one. The Raiders deal was messy, and they say in part because of the A's, but honestly in part because they thought they were the primary tenants, which I'll never actually understand that. They came and left and then came back and destroyed the stadium and only play there 8-9 dates a year, and they're the primary tenant. They have complete control over it anyway. But for the A's to come out and say we're rooted in Oakland, and to work for a couple years on that Laney College area site, the Peralta site, when they didn't even really have the approvals on it, they spent years on it. And then it fell through. And ultimately in 2019, at the end of 2019, Howard Terminal's on the map. This is where things are going. And that's great. But really only until the first couple months of 2021, which, oh yeah, by the way, included the entire year of 2020 being shut down because of obvious reasons. How long was it ever really worked on with Howard Terminal? And with parallel paths of the last couple years, that was not an exclusive focus on Howard Terminal. You could say at this point that the parallel paths portion of the A's pursuits, with a lot of P's there, that has existed longer than solely focusing on Howard Terminal, if you really think about it. I guess the last thing I want to say here is, there's a lot of changed change promised with the A's when they go to Las Vegas. Well, when we go, we're going to spend a lot more money. We're going to make a lot more money. We're going to spend a lot more money. We're going to keep our players. We're going to sell out the stadium. I mean, it's so much easier said than done. And I know a lot of you will say, well, I doubt that could even be followed through on. I won't even go there. And I understand your sentiment. I'm saying that even if the best intentions were met, right? Like even if most things came through as promised, it is still so difficult to be a winning, competitive team and to be able to spend literally $100 million more than the A's do today every single year on players alone. Not to mention all the things that a new stadium is going to need. And they say $1.5 billion. That thing is going to end up costing north of $2 billion. Everything works that way. And Howard Terminal would have worked that way too. Okay, it's a lot. And I guess we'll see if there's any more that comes out in an ultimate third interview, but kind of a monumental day for A's fans in this process. I'm not sure where it takes us from here. And I actually want to end this video by saying in 3 months from now, will we really remember yesterday like standing out as a big part of this process? Will it be one of the game changers of this process? I don't think necessarily it will be, but I don't know. And I wonder, going back to one of my original thoughts, I said, for who? Here's one that I forgot. Was it for Oakland? Was it for Las Vegas? Was it for Mr. Fisher himself? Was this to maybe satisfy the requirements of a Major League Baseball relocation application? Was this something that Major League Baseball might have hinted and said, you might want to get a few of these things on the record just so that when we vote, you'll be able to fall back on these quotes and these things that you said publicly, because we don't have anything that you've said publicly. Was this procedural? I guess we'll find out. Thanks for making it here to the end of the video. I appreciate that. Thumbs up down below since you made it to the end. And don't forget, subscribe to the channel so I can definitely see you next time.